three comments from the public that I want to read first before we get started. If we're all ready to go, I will start that. The first comment is from Kevin Fitch. He says, "Good morning. I was just notified that Tompkins County has businesses opening up on Monday, April 27th. He's from Cortland County. I'm curious, did the governor lift his orders? This notification came in a form of a letter on company's letterhead." Jason, do you have any idea what he's referring to?
I don't. It'd be nice to know what company letterhead they're talking about.
Well, it's a good thing there's a phone number here. I will give them a call and ask.
I think I got that. I got that email forwarded to me. Martha, did you just forward that to me? I think I just got that same email. Yes.
Yeah, I sent it on to Jason and Frank.
Yeah, we can follow up with it, Anna.
That would be great.
And we'll see what's going on. This is Cortland County, so this must be a Cortland County employee.
Yeah, I would think so. But it's unclear whether he means from Cortland County government or if that there's a business that's in Tompkins County that sent this. So
yeah, I can follow up.
Yeah, he sent that this morning. There's another one from Clifford Babson, Tompkins County. "I'm writing to address the Housing Committee concerning the recent resolution to offer rent forgiveness to tenants in Tompkins County. While I admire the intent to assist people in need, passing this resolution would be financially devastating to rental property owners. Unless this resolution included forgiveness of owner mortgages, taxes, and other expenses, then it simply transfers a burden unfairly to hardworking tax-paying members of our community. Property owners are not the 1% and are not financially capable of losing all income for a 3-month period. The legislature is overstepping their bounds by interfering in a legal contract between two parties. These are small businesses, and this resolution would be devastating to them. This body spent much time discussing the need for more housing, especially affordable housing, and this action would bankrupt small property owners across the county and further discourage anyone from ever wanting to create housing in this market. I urge you to please vote against passing this resolution and find better ways to aid those in need without financially destroying small business owners in the process." So, as you all know, I put forward the resolution on 8140 onto the agenda today. So that addresses that to some extent. That's something we can discuss. Hopefully we can vote that onto the agenda, but I'll go next to the third email, and this is Eileen Stout. "It is my understanding that a resolution was passed in Tompkins County to forgive the payment of all rent for 3 months. The damage caused to landlords will be incredible. Landlords will not only be unable to pay their property's mortgage, but also be unable to pay property taxes, utilities, and repairs, not to mention their own personal bills. Furthermore, I believe the resolution is unnecessary since essential workers are still earning, work from home, and workers are still earning, and those collecting unemployment, in many cases, are earning more than they did before they were laid off. Leave this to the landlords to work with a few tenants who may have difficulty paying." So I will communicate back to this person that it was not passed, just so that there's clarification. It sounds like some people think that it was already passed. But those are the comments that I have. So changes to the agenda. I have one resolution that I would like to add to the agenda. And that is the resolution urging the state to establish the emergency rental assistance program. Do I have someone who will second that?
I'll second it. Mike Sigler also raised his hand.
Sorry, I couldn't see my screen. I have to switch between my screens to see the agenda and see all of you. So I have Mike seconding that. All in favor? I guess we have to do a roll call, Kathy.
That's correct.
So I have Martha,
This is of adding it to the agenda, right?
correct.
Okay, yes.
Mike,
Sure.
Henry,
Yes.
Annie.
Yes.
All right, that's everyone. So that has been added to the agenda. Back to the agenda. Minutes approval. This is March 26, 2020. Can I have someone move those? Annie moves. Martha seconds.
I have a comment there
Okay.
on page 4 of the packet, third paragraph, it says, it talks about the about to be testing, the individual must have been exposed or is systematic. I assume that means symptomatic.
Yes, I would imagine that's what it meant.
Okay. Thanks.
Right. With no other changes, I'd like to get a roll call to approve the minutes. Martha,
Yes.
Annie? Annie?
Yes.
Okay. Mike?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
Great. I know we have a packed agenda and I want to keep this relatively tight. So one point that I wanted to make, the resolution that I sent out last night, there was a memo that went with that. Part of the reason those memos are not typically laid out is because it sort of lays out the argument for lawyers for that argument. So, it's why it has not been shared and distributed widely, but that resolution outlined, Henry, what you were looking for from Tuesday night with respect to the unconstitutionality of 8125 and why state organizations are focusing on 8140. So that should be in your mailbox. Committee member reports. Does anyone have any reports? I know we have a long presentation today by tourism, so I will hold off on anything from STPB. ST8, they're meeting next week. So I will bring up a report on that more extensively next time. The only extensive conversation that's been happening in that committee is that a report was brought forward. A contract was done with Labella, and the report included for the 8 surrounding counties information on baseline energy needs, but it also came up with a list of recommendations for various counties. And in one county in particular, there was an outline of a build out of a power plant, natural gas power plant. There was huge pushback from the community on that. And ST8 also did not feel that there was enough information to accurately make that recommendation. So ST8 is not actively promoting the recommendations that were given by Labella, but the baseline data for the energy need is fundamental for helping counties apply for federal aid for some programs. So that component is being actively promoted in this and will probably be approved at the next ST8 meeting. So you may be hearing about some from some environmental groups on that report that will be passed through probably next week. County Administrator's report.
Good morning, everyone. I don't have anything specific to report. If you'd like, I can answer any questions regarding our COVID-19 response. We just did a local elected official committee meeting, local elected official meeting, our Thursday morning one. It was good, well received again. I know the staff is going to be doing the nonprofit one today as well. So I don't have anything specific related to housing or economic development, other than if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? We're a chipper crowd this morning. You seem to be quite chipper on your municipal call too, Jason. So I think
Well,
you
we
must
try-
have watched out.
We try to make it entertaining,
Yes, so you managed, definitely. All right, moving on. Planning and Sustainability Department, Commissioner of Planning and Sustainability Report. I think Megan's on the line for that.
I'm here too.
Oh, Katie, look at.
I
Oh,
can't
lovely
promise to be
you.
chipper, but I'll try the best I can.
We'll take it.
Yeah, so Megan and I submitted a written report, realizing that you've got a very full agenda. Happy to answer any questions, but
Oh, that was quite helpful. I know, Martha, did you have any specific questions to that?
Yeah, I did email a couple of questions. I was interested in kind of what staff are doing finance and DSS, and kind of what things are not getting done or moved aside, or how's the work plan being adjusted for the department?
well, we're pretty focused on trying to get full work for all of our employees so that they don't need to take the emergency leave and they can still be real productive working from home or in the office. So Darielle Drake, our account clerk, has been doing a tremendous job helping out finance right now with a lot of their invoicing and entering data into Laserfish, and a lot of very detailed, complicated work. And I understand she's doing an excellent job helping them out right now. We have our GIS analyst, Sharon Heller, helping the Department of Social Services. They've got a lot of just data entry into their Laserfish data sheets for the COVID response and trying to help out with that. And then, as you know, Kristen McCarthy is helping with the public information up at the EOC, and I've been working at the EOC as well. And so we're all just navigating, the Business Energy Advisors Program has been going at a pretty good clip, but it's been slowing down a little bit. So Andrea is now helping with the greenhouse gas emissions inventory. She's working on transitioning our website with ITS. So we're keeping busy, but yes, we're juggling things and making sure we're moving things forward that can be moved forward in this time. So yeah, doing well.
And I did get an email back from you and from Megan, and Megan commented, and Megan, yay, silver lining that you're all learning more about other departments and sort of cross training on a lot of different issues and skills. And that's very well, much appreciated.
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, I think in general, maybe Jason can speak to this too, the cross collaboration with departments, all getting to know and appreciate what each other does has been pretty remarkable during this whole period.
I'll just add, what we did is, because there's multiple things going on, obviously at one point in time, the planning section up here, tasked some of the folks that were assigned to the planning section to check in with a set amount of departments to going, and that feedback then worked its way up to Jay and then ultimately to me to respond to. So I think a lot of positive feedback. They appreciated the one-on-ones. I know Katie were doing some of it. I know some other, Bridget was doing some of it. So there were some other folks that were checking in and had certain assigned departments, and I know it was well received. So it was good to be able to have communication with them, be able to get answers back to them quickly, and I know they appreciated it.
Thank you, Jason. Unless anybody else has any questions, I had two quick questions on the commissioner's report. The first one, you talked about the low-income housing tax credit awards. These were awards from the applications in the fall that were just announced. Is that the case?
That's correct.
The Carpenter Business Park project is going to go back into the fall with the Immaculate Conception, and are those the only two we expect?
So actually this, the state last year changed the process. So there are now 2 application rounds per year instead of 1. And so what they did is anybody that wasn't successful from this fall round, I believe they're rolling them all forward as long as they want to go forward into the spring round. So that's what's going in with the INHS project. And then I believe INHS is anticipating putting their Trumansburg project into the fall round.
Okay. And those are the only 3 that we have on our plate that we know of?
For the moment, there may be some other, rehab or other things coming our way, but in terms of tax credit projects, that's correct. We don't know of any others right now.
And you mentioned the 4 townhomes in INHS that are the affordable housing developments going up right now because those are considered essential. Are there any others besides those 4 townhomes?
I believe Milton Meadows was basically complete, so they didn't need to be exempted from the construction pause. So I think that's really all that we've got going on right now. We've been in touch with some of the other developers that have received Community Housing Development Fund awards. I think Habitat is doing the best they can to finish up their Slaterville Road project, although of course that originally included a lot of volunteer labor, which has been an issue. And then Todd Fox also has a Community Housing Development Fund award for a project that hasn't broken ground, but they're lining everything up. So we anticipate that starting soon.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that report, Katie and Megan. I know we have a very big tourism presentation discussion coming up. So I want to, Martha, did you have another comment?
Yeah, on Carpenter Park, did you get any feedback about why it didn't succeed? I know Lenny's been helpful in giving us that kind of feedback.
We haven't heard any directly yet, but I think they've been in the kind of the rush mode of getting out of one round and getting everything into the next round. So I anticipate we'll have a chance to talk with him.
Okay, thank you.
I see David West here also. Did you have anything to add to that?
I was just going to add, we did hear that a change in the way they calculate scores happened this round that kind of privileged downstate, denser cities.
Oh, great.
And we're expecting a change in that. The state wasn't happy with the outcome of it, so they're revamping their scoring criteria for next time.
Wait, so you're saying they changed it so that it advantaged downstate and they recognized they did not like the outcome of that, so they're going to change it back, or they're just going to change it again to balance it?
They're going to change it again.
Okay, all right, good grief. Well, thank you for that update. All right, unless anybody else has any questions, I was going to move to Nick to give us the tourism report. Hi,
Sure
Nick.
thing. Hi. So yeah, I don't have a written report, but I'll go through sort of 4 points I wanted to just share with the committee where we're at in the tourism program, starting with a look at our revised 2020 budget. Then taking a look at our sort of the short-term impacts of that revision, touching on where we are with our ACOD grant recipients, and then sort of a final point of where we go from here, more long range. So first up, our 2020 budget forecast. So originally we had budgeted to collect just over $3 million in room tax this year. As we reported last month, that quickly became apparent with this situation that was not going to pan out, and we had sort of developed 4 scenarios of where we could land. Since that meeting, we've reviewed those scenarios with the STPB Budget Committee, with the Convention Visitors Bureau, and we were currently sort of on track for what we had called scenario C, which was a scenario that would put us at about $1.8 million in revenue for the year. Of course, there's a whole range of assumptions built into that, and I can kind of explain those and what the implications of those are. But before I dive into that, I just want to also give a little respect, I think, to the budget committee that's put a lot of hard work and thought into this effort as it's come together in the last few weeks. The committee is comprised of Kelly Cartmill, who's the chair of STPB and the director of sales of the Hilton Garden Inn, which is still open. Brett Bossard, Cinemopoulos, vice chair of STPB. Josh Friedman, Scott Wiggins of La Tourelle, which I actually learned has just reopened, and Greg Mezzi, who's a CFO. So we have some, real talent in that group that has been looking at this situation over the last few weeks. So of our 4 scenarios, I'll just kind of give a range of, sort of what our best case was and where we are currently tracking for what we had called scenario C, which was titled "Things Are Bad." So there were sort of 3 variables that we were playing with in our scenarios: occupancy of hotels, hotel nightly rates, and our total room supply. In occupancy, in our best case scenario, we had isolated all of the impact to our second quarter, and we're expecting about a 38% drop. In scenario C, we were projecting a 50% drop in occupancy in the second quarter, and then continued drop in the third quarter, marginal drop. So that's kind of the biggest factor right now is that people are not traveling. The rooms are just simply not being sold. It's tourism is a perishable good in a sense. We do not, if it's not sold, it doesn't generate any revenue or local income. The second variable we looked at was hotel rates. In our best case, we were looking at all of the impact being isolated to the second quarter here, and about a $28 drop in our average daily rate. And in scenario C, that rate drop was steeper, $49 in the second quarter, and then substantial reductions in this third and fourth quarter as well. Assuming that there would be some, lingering economic effects throughout the remainder of the year. I'll talk a little bit more about rates later. Rates are going to be an important thing for us to track throughout the next few months. It will be a real good indicator of where the market is going. And the final indicator we were playing with, final variable we were looking at was room supply. This is literally the number of hotel rooms we have available that are open. There were some temporary closures and still are, I understand, of hotels. This is looking at the permanent supply of hotel rooms. So if a hotel goes out of business and is no longer active, even after the event is over. In our best case scenario, we were forecasting no impact there, that all the hotels would survive the event. In scenario C, we're forecasting a loss of about 200 hotel rooms, approximately 10% of our hotel room inventory. I should say that's by the fourth quarter. So we're not totally sure when those hotels will close down, but that was the final result of that. So those were sort of the benchmarks you could say within the scenarios. There was an even worse case. And, personally, I am still concerned that we could still be going that direction, that the recovery will not be as quick as even scenario C was projecting. I think some of the venues and attractions to our local, to our county will continue to be impacted by this event, even after other portions of the economy are reopened. And there are big variables that are, very much unknown at this point that we're, wrestling with in terms of what will happen later in the fall. particularly with regard to the academic schedule. So where we're at right now is we're going to be monitoring and updating this 2020 room tax forecast as data comes in. And we just this week got data for March for hotel sales from the Smith Travel Report. And it is actually pretty close to lining up with our scenario C. I will say the one good thing is that the rates held higher than we had forecast. So our rates, hotel rates were better than that scenario. But occupancy was down about 55%. The other wrinkle, and one we had not factored in any of these scenarios, was non-payment of hotel taxes. We learned from finance that 10 hotels did not pay their room tax, and that this, we're concerned that this pattern will continue into the second quarter and potentially longer, as long as the businesses view this as effectively the penalty of not paying room tax as being lower than other costs that they're facing currently. This may also change course as some of the financial aid money comes out. Finance is in touch with all of the properties that are not in compliance, that are delinquent on their room tax, and working with them to collect that funding. So that's basically where we're at for our 2020 budget. We're on pace right now for the $1.8 million in collection, as opposed to $3 million we had budgeted. So in light of that, the second point I want to talk about is kind of our short-term impacts and what we're doing to control costs and make sure we don't put the county into a position where you're expending funding you do not have, or tapping the general fund or other tax sources. So we, following the HED meeting, approximately, in line with it last week, we began suspending all other grant programs. So that's represents 6 line items in our budget, and a total of nearly $500,000, $494,000 of funding that we had planned to go out in various grants that will not be awarded. We had actually already received 62 grant applications and informed all of those applicants that the programs have been suspended over the last couple of weeks. So that was sort of our first cut. That was the sort of easy cut.
Before you go on, how many organizations was that?
I don't have a count of the organizations, because some applications of those applications, some of them came from the same organization. I don't know. I could track it down, but it's several dozen, probably 30 or more.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that was the easy part of changing the budget. Working with the budget committee of STPB, we asked each of the program administrators, and these are organizations such as the Convention Visitors Bureau, Downtown Ithaca Alliance, Community Arts Partnership, TCAD, Cooperative Extension, Tompkins County, Workforce Development, and County Historian, to each consider what the implications of a 30% cut to their annual budget would be. These are the organizations that do sort of the heavy lifting in the tourism program, so to speak. They work throughout the year on core aspects of tourism, and so we had asked for responses on that to be sent in last week, and met with the budget committee yesterday to review those, and are coming up with a draft revised budget that will reflect approximately a 30% across the board cut for those organizations. There are some nuances that we'll have to address in that as well. But that's the direction that we're heading next, and we'll be preparing that as a budget amendment that would be presented to the STPB in May for their May 20 meeting. So we're that's sort of that's how we're reining in the finances presently on the tourism program, and making sure that we're controlling expenditures. Third point I want to touch on was there was a fair amount of discussion last month about our ACOD grant recipients, and want to circle back on that. So following up on the meeting, Megan Barber, who's the new director at Community Arts Partnership, and I held meetings with each of the 14 organizations that received an ACOD grant this year. We had a series of questions that we asked each organization, and took notes about their responses. The questions were the following. We asked, when did the pandemic begin to affect their programming or our operations? And then, assuming that they had a revenue impact, which all have had a revenue, loss because of it, asking them, what steps they had taken on cost containment. And I can say, all of the organizations have taken some steps, some much more drastic than others. We followed up if there were any furloughs or other workforce reductions. Again, many organizations had done that, still working on the numbers for, to tally that all up. And then discussing, what other cost containment options they're considering at this time, if there are other, things that they maybe reviewed as the situation lasts longer or, than they're expecting. And then we also asked if they had applied for any of the federal assistance. During the time when we were asking, I think all but one of the organizations had applied. However, I don't recall if any of them had actually received the money yet. Because it was still kind of in that window when applications were in, but decisions hadn't been awarded.
And Nick, they had applied to PPP or EIDL?
The
Or-
payroll. All but one had applied to payroll. A few had applied to EIDL. And then we also just sort of asked them, if there were other things they wanted us to be aware of, things that were on their mind or that they're working on. And I think one of the key takeaways for me with that was really concern about audiences coming back even after regulations are lifted. And I think there's a question about the confidence and willingness of people to go to specific destinations even before there's a vaccine available. And especially as that intersects with audience demographics for certain organizations. So Megan and I are working on a memo that will sort of summarize what we found and start to analyze what the consensus was there, what the sort of findings were. But we don't have at this point any real deliverable at this time. We're still putting that all together. And then I finally kind of want to turn toward where we are as our tourism sector and what we're looking at going forward. We've got a long road ahead of us. I think this is maybe the end of the beginning. We'll be engaging the STPB and the Planning Evaluation Committee of that board regarding the topic of how we restore tourism to our destination and what our recovery strategy is. We're going to, really look hard at this and try to do this from an objective viewpoint as possible to think about, what the next steps are and where we really fit within this, the new normal as it is, and look at, what we're, both our destination and the markets that send people to us. So we're also going to continue to use our strategic tourism plan, which was recently adopted, to continue to provide guidance and direction for the program. The goal here is to have a really thriving tourism sector. We got to remember that, without funding coming in from, our hotels, the program can't run. We can't do all the great things that everybody loves. So that's going to be a primary focus, is how to kind of restart the engine. So With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all have.
Megan and Katie, did you have anything to add to that before I open it to the floor?
I would just add that I think, as Nick was saying, this STPB budget committee is made up of a really great group who are, passionate about this topic and are very worried about it. They're being very thoughtful in their approach, and each one of them are being hurt pretty dramatically in their own businesses. For them to take the time out of this crazy time for themselves to focus on our broader community and making sure that we have a good tourism resource when we come out of COVID, that's really their focus. It's pretty incredible. And I would just emphasize that we're really kind of trying to take an incremental approach to the tourism moving forward. It's such an unknown right now that, we're starting with this 30% discussion, and then with the idea that we will continue to reevaluate and make sure that we come up with the best projections we can over the course of the next 6 months before making big decisions on anything. We'll kind of take this incremental approach to it.
Great. Questions from the committee? Deborah?
Yeah, thank you, Anna. And thank you, Nick. You have an unenviable job right at the moment. I did hear at a meeting yesterday, and I can't remember which meeting it was, Katie was on it, but somebody mentioned that the Brookings Institute had done a study of the sectors of the economy that would be most negatively impacted by coronavirus. And hospitality, entertainment, travel, and transportation are apparently near the top of the list. So that's probably something we need to be aware of. It's not.
Yeah. Similarly, McKinsey did a study. I can email to Anna or the group here that looked very broadly at the economy, but had a section on air and travel. And the impact of this event is orders of magnitude larger than 9/11 or SARS, which are the kind of only two analogies we have. And we still really don't know where the end is, or what that looks like. So it's one other thing, a resource that I go to that I had hoped to kind of use to help us develop our annual budget is the U.S. travel. They call it a travel trend index, and it's a national product that looks at the current state of affairs for the current month, and then a 3 and 6 month forecast for travel. They've just stopped publishing it because they have no idea. So it's everybody, yeah, it's we're kind of staring into the abyss at this point. Although now free falling feels normal, so at least that's okay. So.
Great. I have Martha next, and then Henry.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick, and send our thanks to the budget committee and everybody else working on this. Have any of the hotels applied for federal money for PPP or anything else?
I don't know. We could send a questionnaire out to the hotels.
Yeah, and because I don't know what category, if they're still open, I don't know what category of funding they'd be eligible for, but it might be worth expressing to them, I don't know how exactly, but state and local governments have not gotten general revenue replacement funds from the federal government. None at all. All we've been allocated is Medicaid money, and we haven't gotten that yet either. And now Mitch McConnell is making very serious noises about, and saying a lot about, now he's worried about the deficit before we look at another federal bill. Now he's worried, he's thinking, don't laugh, Deborah, like this is exactly what we heard might happen. And he's even floating the idea that bankruptcy might be a better idea for state and local governments. I was going to ask Jonathan and Jason and Rick what that even means.
You can in New York.
What,
You
Jason?
You can't file bankruptcy in New York State. The last municipality were to do that was New York City in the early 30s, I think, or mid. You can't legally file for bankruptcy in New York State as a municipality. You have a state fiscal board that would come in.
And the state can also not file for bankruptcy either.
Well, somebody ought to tell Mitch McConnell. Anyway,
It
so
wouldn't,
it is not, it doesn't look good. So if the hotels think that we're in better shape than they are, I guess I would urge that maybe a memo go out in some way. Anyway, so I would urge that the hotels be expected to apply for whatever assistance is available. And I know we're all looking at whether the colleges open up in the fall. That's kind of the big question that's hanging over all of this. So good luck. Thanks a lot, Nick.
All right, I have Henry next.
Yes, this is a question for Nick or for Jason. What can be done about the hotels not paying their hotel taxes?
Talked briefly a little bit with Jonathan. I mean, we can take legal action. The approach we took right now is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, I think the approach we took is we had the finance office reach out to all of them, ask them what their current circumstances are. I do believe some of them have applied for the PPP protection, but I don't know all of it. And then really try to get understanding what's their be paying, once the PP revenue started coming in. I think at this stage of the game, just recognizing everybody's, first of all, technically they should not have done that. That is not their money to do that. It is
Right.
because that are collected. So, technically that they shouldn't be doing that, but obviously we don't get it immediately when it's earned. They emit it to us. So, that should not happen, but it has from a cash flow perspective, most likely on their part. So I think we continue to follow up monthly. I think it would probably be a bad move to start filing legal action, now, getting them to pay when, a good portion of them have closed their doors for a period of time. But I say we'll continue to follow up, next month, and then probably, depending on how things happen the following month, if people are still delinquent, then we'll have to have another conversation about how do we pursue it. But it would be a legal action that the county attorney would file.
Yeah, and I'll say from the Smith travel reports we had gotten for the first quarter, which represents December, January, and February, we were actually expecting to be sort of on track with our budget as originally developed. The first quarter is our weakest quarter, but overall the hotels, had normal sort of occupancy and rates for that period. The wrinkle came in that the taxes, I think, were due on March 20th. So by that point, the writing was on the wall for these properties that, had cash flow issues. And I think right now I know of at least one property that's applied for the payroll protection, but we could certainly do a survey to see if there's others that have.
Thanks, Nick. Jason, you had a comment before I go. Henry, did you have more?
You have more questions? Nick, what you talked about using version C, is there version D?
There is.
And could you explain what, because I know that you talked about version C which comes back, but Cornell just announced yesterday that they're canceling all their summer courses. And know a lot of summer travel are Cornell related. So
Yeah.
What impact did that have on the budget committee?
I don't think we had a chance yet to review the specific impact of Cornell's recent decision relating to summer courses. But I can certainly add it to our list of things to review. I think, so scenario D, just for point of reference, we're looking at, so if the top line number of total room tax collection for scenario D was 1.47 million compared to scenario C, which was 1.8 million. The biggest difference with scenario D is that the impacts really drag deeper into the summer and fall, assuming that, you know, our summer travel season is pretty muted, and commencements as proposed for August aren't happening. And however, I will say I don't think that scenario really took into account any idea that the fall semester would be substantially affected. When that was developed, that was not on my mind. But it's becoming apparent through media reports. I think that all the higher education institutions are really evaluating all their options for the fall.
Okay.
Jason, you had a comment that you wanted to make?
Just that, you know, I think the question was about whether or not hotels understood what we're facing impact wise. I think they do. I mentioned briefly at the committee meeting yesterday, just explained to them kind of the global perspective of the unknowns that we're facing. So I think they have an understanding of what at least that group has an understanding of what the county's facing. And I'll second what Katie said. You know, they're being very thoughtful. They're being as methodical as they can to try to understand and try to make good recommendations. So I think the group is well thought out and well intentioned.
Thanks. Annie?
Thank you for that report, Nick. And so a couple of questions. First off, just wondering how you're able to do all this working half-time, but I guess that's something you'll have to figure out yourself or your department.
That's how do I figure out how to do it? I've taken some, steps to, manage stress and anxiety about it. I think that's helping. And we divide our time in our house. So I typically work afternoons starting after my son goes down for his nap, and try to aim to get an average of 4 hours a day in. My wife is working from home too, so she picks up the slack in the afternoon when he wakes up. So yeah, it's a balance every day.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And because I know a lot of people, I would just want to be cognizant because, a lot of people are experiencing various different challenges trying to work from home. So thank you for telling us about that. So one of the questions I had regarding since the room tax for some of the hotels are not being paid, I'm wondering about if at some point we might find out that the sales tax is also not being paid, but I don't know if we have any indication of that yet.
Has there been any indication of that?
The sales tax is not being paid?
Yeah.
I guess that's a possibility. I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know that we do that. They could happen. Obviously, they're dealing with the state if they don't do that. And I have a feeling the state would be less lenient with respect to penalties and interest. I mean, they have to report it. If they don't pay what they report, then, that's what we had in these instances. We even had some hotels report a certain amount, but didn't pay it. If they did that with the state, I would imagine the state probably has less leniency than we do with respect to fees and interest and penalties. But, and I don't know that we would even know that information, but we can try to find out. But I suspect it's going on to some level.
Jason, do we have an established protocol for fees, interest, and payments for
I think the law, yeah. I don't know off the top of my head, but I think there's an interest and penalty process in the law that would have to be imposed.
But it's up to us whether we impose it.
No, it's kind of and Nick, you probably are a little more familiar. My last reading of it, it's kind of a loose accountability mechanism, but I don't remember it off the top of my head. Do you have more insight on it, Nick?
I'm pulling it up right now. It's actually, you're correct that it's established in the law as to what the penalties are. I'm just digging through it. So the penalty for a late payment is 10% of the tax owed plus interest at the rate of 1.5% per month. In addition, operators failing to comply with the occupancy tax may be charged with a misdemeanor, the punishment for which is a fine of not more than $1,000 or imprisonment not exceeding 1 year. So that's the enforcement mechanism.
right. Thank you, Nick. I want to keep moving forward. Shauna, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, do we happen to have any information? Is this happening in other counties and municipalities?
Not aware of it. We could ask around.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see if this is a collective throughout New York State and what's being done in other areas.
I can say with our latest Smith Travel reports, we did get some data comparing our county to the state, upstate, and then a few other communities outside of New York. We're certainly not unique. This is, that's one thing this crisis has, I think illustrated, is that we're all really being affected by this. The timing may be off by a week or two here or there, but it's we're all being hit real hard with this. So I expect that other municipalities are going to have similar tax collection challenges.
Thank you.
Great. Moving on to workforce. We have housing next. Megan and David, you have some exciting news for reprogram CDBG funds for rental support, something you're going to pursue and share with us today.
Sure, I'll be happy to kick it off. We have been working with the State Office of Community Renewal. They opened up our current grant that we have, which was $727,600 awarded last year for a renovation of referred to as substandard single-family homes owned by low and moderate income households. That program had to be put on hold because the state doesn't want any contractors or inspectors going into anyone's individual housing units at this time because of COVID. And with that on hold, we were looking at what more useful things can we do with the money right now. I don't know that it was our recommendation, but several weeks ago at the beginning of this, I reached out to our person at OCR asking them if they were going to consider this kind of an opportunity to use money for emergency uses. At that time, they weren't thinking about it yet, but then a few weeks later, we heard that they were. And they specifically had a webinar for how we can use this money to provide kind of immediate assistance to renters to help them get through 3 months of this crisis. It's basically the only way that these kinds of funds can be used as rental assistance is if it's what's called short-term subsistence payments. So it's a maximum of 3 months. The state is being very flexible in what other requirements there would be. We just have to serve the people under 80% of median income. They have to be Tompkins County residents outside of the city because the city gets their own money from HUD as an entitlement community. The households served have to be impacted by COVID. And the landlords have to self-certify that their units meet code requirements. Normally there would be inspections required, but obviously inspections are not happening at this time. If restrictions were lifted and that could happen, landlords would have to be open to that as well. So we are trying to move quickly with this to get the assistance to people as soon as possible because it's really needed. We are working with INHS. I see Johanna's on the line. And also Megan has been talking with DSS about how we can structure this program. So that work will be ongoing, and what we'd really like from the committee is just a motion in support of us continuing this work and this conversation to come up with the specifics of this program. As far as the state's concerned, they don't need anything specific from the legislature. And we're not going to have to go back through a public process or an environmental review process to redistribute these funds within this program.
So David, just to be clear before we go to questions, This does not need to be approved by the state. This is something that they're already authorizing, and it would need to be something we approve here, or is it a process would need to go back to the state for final approval?
We need to formally request from the state that we transition the funds in this way. And, they may come back with comments, but they have upfront said that they want to receive these formal requests, and they've laid out a very streamlined process for doing so. So the next step would be a letter from Jason Molino to Jason Purvis at OCR requesting that we transition these dollars to that separate allowed use.
Thank you for pursuing this as an amazing opportunity, because there are so many people who are rent burdened right now in Tompkins County that I think many of us as legislators have been worried about, hearing about a lot. I think that the main concern is, of course, is how it would be implemented so that given the fact that there's obviously not going to be enough for all people who are rent burdened in the county, how it would be distributed, first come, first serve, lottery, to make it equitable.
Yeah, and I'd add that, again, this can only be for people who are under 80% of median income. So it's all already low and moderate income households. INHS let us know that they have other funding that's tied to specifically under 60% of AMI. So there will be even more resources available for the lower income brackets. And we're working with the city to try and have anything that they do with their funds and what we do with our funds to be able to kind of run in parallel so that INHS can message this really well, and we can get the message out to our community in a way that is pretty streamlined about what's available.
To make it clear for any public who's watching, this is funding for the county independent of the city, because the city is its own entitlement community with CDBG funding of its own. And I understand they are also looking into doing something like this in partnership with INHS. And we have Johanna on the line. Johanna, do you want to join in? Hi, Johanna.
Hey, welcome to my basement.
Wow, welcome. Much appreciated. Haven't seen that.
No problem. So yes, as David mentioned, INHS, we have $335,000 of home funds available for Tompkins County to serve, provide rent assistance to households under 60% of area median income. And that's exclusive of the city. So we should have, and then I believe with the existing grant amount of CDBG funds, we have roughly $590,000 available.
Amazing. I wanted to open it up to questions from the committee. I have tons of questions. I can keep asking questions. All right, great. Tebra. You are on mute. Okay, you got it.
Yeah, I tried Rich John's trick, but it didn't work on this one. I'm curious about whether by the time this program gets approved, there are going to be people who are in arrears on their rent. If they qualify for the program, will the program pay the arrearage, or will it be prospective in operation?
Sure. So the program can pay rent that was due anytime. It's a combination of two factors: after the emergency declaration, which was March 13th, and after whatever financial impact to the actual household. So whether they lost hours or lost their job, as long as the rent was due after both of those two things, the program can cover it for a total of 3 months, or maximum of 3 months.
Thank you. And thank you for being this is really, this could solve a big problem for us, and I appreciate it. And then the only other thing I wanted to ask is whether Johanna has classes for the Anderson School for Homely Children down there in the basement, following you on Facebook.
No, the homely children are, they have their desks upstairs. So this is just the INHS building.
Okay.
All right. I have from committee, I have, I'm just going to go in order how I see them. I don't know who raised their hands first, but I have Annie Corman next.
Thank you. So what I'm wondering, does it make sense to consider, and maybe folks have already considered this, as far as if this type of grant is or assistance is offered, to make it contingent or subsequently contingent on not also receiving state grants for that same period?
For the same use for rent as well.
Right.
Yeah,
And I
I
guess,
think,
would it be paid right to them or their landlord?
sure, the rent is paid directly to the landlord. And because of that, one of the other requirements is that there either has to be a lease or a signed agreement from the landlord that both the rent will be the same for those 3 months and that the tenant will be in place for those 3 months.
So I'm just going back to my question then. I mean, my first thought, I don't want to say that that's my first thought. I mean, I really like the idea of this, but I just want to make sure that it's then as much accessible to as many people as possible. And part of that is making sure that people aren't taking advantage of more than one program for the same type of thing.
Yeah, I think something along those lines can be worked into a contract. I think we're working out the details with INHS and with the input from DSS. I would think that in any income qualification process, something like that would come up, but we can make sure it's noted as a concern.
In regards to someone said about, or we're previously talking about the fees that people would be accruing or interest or whatever penalties regarding this period where they're in arrears of their rent. Is that part of this? Does anybody know? Is that part of the state moratorium or I can't think of what the name of it is, but in saying that they don't have to pay their rent during this time, do they still get penalties?
You mean rent forgiveness, Annie?
Well, rent not, isn't there some program or some executive order where people aren't going to be getting kicked out within
now-
this 90 days?
Right now,
Right?
there's a 90-day moratorium. It is a judicial order. Well, I'm sorry, it is an indefinite time period. It was identified for 90 days, but it's actually an indefinite judicial order that puts a moratorium on evictions, eviction proceedings, and mortgage proceedings for being back on mortgage as well. So that's the only thing that's in place right now. And there's nothing in place for when the state of emergency is lifted or how any arrears will be handled at that time.
So people can still be getting penalties during this time
Correct.
for their rent. Okay, thank you.
And I'll just say that this money cannot be paid, cannot pay late fees, but it can pay for the rent that was in arrears. So we could pay the straight rent, and I think work on an agreement with the landlord that if you're being paid that back rent, to waive any late fees that might have accrued during that time.
Thank you.
And I think in terms of duplicating funding as well, in talking with DSS, they have different housing assistance programs too. A lot of this money all originates from HUD, so it has limits, and you can't, kind of double or triple team that money and extend the number of funds and things like that. So that's why that coordination will be important, and I think a way to make sure that we especially target those that maybe can't receive DSS assistance due to, whatever regulations or things that they might fall into, to try to make sure that we're spreading the rental assistance as broadly through the people impacted financially by COVID as we can.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Annie, are you done?
Lastly, if Johanna can give me her address, I can drop off a space heater after the meeting.
I was gonna say, I'm working some indication.
It's a little chilly down here.
Martha Robertson.
Thanks. Good to see you, Johanna, and everybody. So I did email, I know we got a lot to cover. Just quickly, I emailed David and he answered last night that this should help 150 to 160 households. and cover 3 months worth of rent in full. So I think this is great. Delighted to hear that maybe that you guys really stimulated getting this going. Thank you very much. So the other question, so INHS would do this for both the city and outside the city, but this bucket of money is just for outside.
That's
Is that-
correct. That is
Okay.
correct. We have funds available for Seneca County, Schuyler County, Tioga County, and then this particular set of funds is just for Tompkins.
Okay, and you said, so the total available is 590,000.
Roughly.
Okay, and David wrote me that, yes, this would, the money would be gone. It's not any kind of revolving loan or anything, so the money would be gone, but then once we spend it, we can quickly apply for more. So I like the sound of that too. I hope we just sort of quickly move on and say, yes, go for it. So thanks very much for doing this.
Thank you.
Henry, I see your hand raised. Was that from before or is that another
Nope.
question?
That's another question.
Okay.
What's the total amount for the county and also for the city? How much does the city have available?
I think the city is deciding, they have a pool of emergency CDBG funds that they are expecting. They don't have the money now. They don't have an open grant like we do. So they are expecting this emergency allocation and they have to decide how they divide it between housing and economic development and other costs they're incurring. So we expect it will be significantly less than what we have, but we don't have a clear number from them. And then INHS is bringing in their existing open home funds. And I believe, Johanna, maybe you want to talk to this, pursuing foundation and other funding sources.
We currently have 5 requests into area foundations for totaling about $150,000 worth of rental assistance so that we can fill gaps in case households don't meet all of the eligibility requirements. So we should hopefully hear from those in the next week or two.
Okay. And what's the timing of when this would be in place?
We anticipate right now that our internal systems are shooting for a May 4th date.
And from the county level?
It's going to depend on the state in terms of getting the actual authorization and some of the documentation that we need in place. So that's why we wanted to go ahead and get your authorization today for Jason to send that letter. So we can hopefully have it on the top of the pile of many I think they'll be looking at.
Okay.
All right, Henry, is that
Yep, that's it.
great? I just wanted to thank all of you guys. You're always cutting edge. You're always in your thinking. And, we get so much negative news lately or disappointing news or disturbing news or stressful news over and over and over again. This was the first time that that I heard positive news when you guys brought this up to me. And I think I actually whooped with joy. Might have scared a couple cats in some houses when I heard this, but this is really important because there's so many people who are experiencing, who are rent burdened. And I think so many more people than there were prior to this crisis, of course. So this will be a huge relief. And I'm really glad to hear also that once it's used up, there's the potential to apply for continued CDBG funding. And once this channel is in place, then it might be easier to funnel it into this program. So hopefully that will be the case. I know Martha had a comment as well. I'm seeing your hand.
Yeah, just quickly that I also asked David about immigration status. And he said we probably wouldn't be able to advertise that federal money is going to people who are, say, undocumented. I said, fine, we don't have to advertise it, but I was hoping that there would not be a prohibition at least. But so maybe that's all I want to say. I think we would be happy if it's used for whoever needs it. So if you need that cover.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Something like that.
Great. Thank you guys so much. And we look forward to hearing how this goes. If you could shoot us an email, there's huge thank yous. Annie's sending a thank you. You think you've lifted all of our days today. So thank you for your great work. And we are moving on to workforce diversity. Our Workforce Development Board, Natalie is on the call. We have a resolution and a discussion. Natalie?
Anna?
Hi, welcome.
Anna, it's Kathy. Sorry, I think they're looking for a motion on that.
Yes,
Oh,
please.
yes, you want, so it is a straw poll, a motion to support?
I think they should have, I think it should be a motion and a vote.
So I'll move a motion to support. I have Martha seconding. On, we should do a roll call. Mike,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes, the motion is just to support. Is that it?
correct.
Okay, yes.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I vote yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Martha. I think that's all of you need, Megan and David, correct? Thank you, and Godspeed on that or something, isn't that the phrase? Natalie?
Thank you.
Well, we submitted a set of slides with some numbers relevant to the workforce and employment situation here in the county. If you've seen those, I think we do have them available. So if you'd like to see them now, we can walk through, or I can simply go through verbally.
I'm gonna try to share my screen now.
That would be really great, Kathy. Thank you.
Can you
We're all
see
learning
it?
together.
Yes.
We can, thank
Yes,
you.
we can.
Thanks very much. Well, we just want to kick off by saying that as with many of the systems here in the county, the workforce system is undergoing a tremendous amount of change at the moment. Kathy, if you could give me the next slide. Thanks very much. I think one of the questions that everyone has at the moment is mainly around the unemployment insurance system and the new benefits that were created in the CARES Act. They're now being interpreted and delivered by the state. This just gives us a snapshot of what's happening in the county in terms of new unemployment claims. So as you all know, we are living in an economy of executive orders, which came down, I think, beginning March 17th. So this first line that you see for March 23rd is a reflection of our behavior as a county in interpreting those and people filing for new claims, either online or on the phone or by calling the Career Center. We had 400 new unemployment insurance claims the week of the 23rd. The week of March 30th, you can see 1,200. The week of April 6th, 900. And last week, 655 new unemployment insurance claims. Tomorrow, we'll receive the number of new claims for this week, for a total of over 3,000 new claims in the county. This number comes with a caveat, which is that not everyone who has applied has been successful, and not everyone who is out of work is claiming. So we are in the process of making sure we can reach out to people. There have been a lot of issues, as you all know, at the state level with a system that was creaking and became overloaded. And so Google has donated more server space. Everyone who is on the payroll at the New York State Department of Labor has been reassigned to specifically work on unemployment insurance. And we do feel that this week, following a Tompkins County call with New York State Department of Labor staff and some pretty pointed questions, that the system is starting to smooth out. So in terms of businesses, We really, really do want to promote the Shared Work Program, which is a New York State program. Here's the information for businesses to call. We wanted to make sure you had the numbers and the emails. We have tested these numbers ourselves. You do get through to a real person, and these people answering the phone are extremely helpful on this program. The Shared Work Program allows businesses to apply to be certified to have their workforce receive unemployment insurance for the hours reduced. In order to qualify, a business has to have had between 20% and 60% of their workforce hours reduced. So what that means is that you can remain working, you can maintain your health insurance and your retirement plan, and you can also draw down unemployment insurance. Also, anyone who does qualify for unemployment insurance also is eligible for that $600 additional weekly top-up that you may have heard of. So this is a really, really great tool for businesses that we know are doing some very, very difficult math at the moment. So please, we need to continue to get the message out that the Shared Work Program is available and can be worked into any business scenario planning. We are very much encouraging every business that we talk to try when and if they can to maintain health insurance and retirement plans, 401ks, any kind of pension plan for their employees. And we really want to stress the message that this will keep your employees connected and loyal to you. We want people to be ready for the callback when the time comes. And so we want people to stay as connected to their jobs as possible. Okay, next slide. As far as employees, we're encouraging everyone, even if you don't know what category you fall into, if you're unemployed, if you're furloughed, if you're on layoff, please, please, please go online or call now to apply for unemployment insurance. There's now a second benefit that has been created by the federal government and has finally been interpreted by the state called the PUA, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. And this is for self-employed and gig workers. This was I would say in the early days of the executive orders, this was a major, major issue. We had a very considerable flow of calls from people here in the county who didn't know they were eligible for anything. What do I do if I'm self-employed? And so we are really happy to see this as a federal and a state answer. So we're encouraging everyone who does receive the pandemic unemployment assistance and unemployment assistance is also eligible for that 600 weekly top up. That's absolutely everyone. So please do call to get these benefits. We also want people to know that as much as possible, while the Career Center is closed to visitors, all the federal and state funded workforce programs that we've been able to adapt are being delivered virtually. So please call to ask about those. If you're newly available and you're not at work and you want to brush up on some training, please call us. And there's the Career Center number there. Please listen to the greeting, leave a message, and we can guarantee that you'll receive a call back within the hour. Okay, next slide, please. We also want to get the message out that in the first week of the executive orders, we anticipated a very large flow, as you might imagine, of newly available workers. So we very quickly organized something called the Tompkins Workforce Redirect. The idea is that if you are newly available, we know that there are jobs that have been created at this moment in time as a result of COVID-19. So our idea, and we're beginning to see some evidence that this is working, is that we wanted to completely shift the county workforce as much as possible. We know that some employers are offering remote opportunities, work that can be done from home. We know that healthcare has expanded. And we also know that, grocery stores and food delivery companies need workers as well. So while keeping everyone safe, we wanted to make sure that all of those newly available job opportunities were posted and publicly available to you if you're a new worker. So get in there. Next slide. I think that we workforce development are very conscious that we're at a moment where, if I could borrow a phrase from Nick earlier, I think we're at the end of the beginning. So we are still managing those unemployment insurance claims. We are still trying to reach out as much as possible to get information to Tompkins County residents about new benefits. We are keeping a close eye and are awaiting the official unemployment insurance rate for the county and the Ithaca metropolitan region. Anything that you may be seeing now will reflect March, which, as you know, in a way is a half and half month. So our real picture, I believe, of a local unemployment rate, we will know about when the month of April numbers are published. We're still very much encouraging businesses to engage with the system, apply for the shared work program. And I think at some point, we will want to try to bridge this issue of expanded unemployment in the county with some sort of county-wide work program. So we're in discussions about what those may look like, both for the county and at the state level. So I look forward to reporting back to you on that. I think that's our last slide. I think you're on mute.
I was just asking if you could, before we open up to questions, go back to the previous slide and talk a little bit more about what a work program countywide would look like, what you mean by that.
Well, our inspiration for that is, a 1930s work progress administration work program modernized for today.
Got it.
So we're just in the process of putting down on paper what that might look like and how we can perhaps integrate that with economic development planning and industries that we would like to see supported and grown here in the county. So it's very early days on that. We're aware that New York State is the recipient of a national emergency grant. And so I'm actually due to be on a call in a few minutes to discuss how we might take advantage of that as a county for employment.
Perfect. I see Annie has a question.
I just wanted to thank you, Natalie. I know with your new position here, it's very challenging, but with all the other experience you've had around the world in various brands, I know you're up for the task. So thank you. I know we're in good hands. And I guess my only question would be the 350 jobs. Are you saying there's 350 openings right now?
Yes. So the exciting thing about Workforce Redirect is that our businesses and our companies are using it. So at last count, we've got 150 businesses that have posted 350 positions. And that is all, I just want to emphasize, that's all hiring and job availability since COVID-19. So these are not positions that were being advertised by companies prior to that.
Thank you.
And Natalie, could you post those slides or share these slides so that we can all share them?
Yes, of course.
That would be great. All right,
you can circulate the phone numbers. We really do want the public to call and take advantage of all these benefits.
I know I've been putting them on the listservs, a lot of listservs. I think Annie has too, Henry, I think maybe, I don't know who else has, but absolutely, we'll keep pushing them out. Martha?
Thanks, Natalie. This is all really good stuff. The Workforce Direct is just brilliant. And I would ask that at the next legislature meeting, maybe you can run through basically this whole presentation so that that would go directly to the full public and all legislators would get up to date on it. In particular, the shared work program. I mean, there've been so many things flying by. I haven't been able to keep up. And that one I didn't really understand. And that sounds like a really important benefit for businesses. We have such a regional labor market though, with 15,000 or so people, I guess, used to be commuting in. How are you working with the other counties surrounding? And are these opportunities being pushed out to our surrounding neighbors?
Yeah, thank you for that question. One of the first things that we did was we reached out to Cayuga Cortland and Chemung Schuyler Steuben. That's how in the Workforce Development Board world, how we're organized. And we did make the offer that if their businesses wanted to sort of chime into the Workforce Redirect, we would welcome that. There's no cost to us at all. And as you know, labor markets don't recognize political boundaries. So some of the jobs that are posted on Workforce Redirect are from outside the county, not a large amount, but some, I would say probably less than 10%.
Well, and then Tioga County's in there too?
Yes.
Okay. I guess the question is to push that opportunity out to the workers, to employ, former and potential employees as well. So maybe that's through the county governments on their websites. If they could sort of mirror what we've got, maybe that's another way to connect people.
Absolutely. And we do know that there's another example like Workforce Redirect in Rochester. And so we're liaising with their workforce board to sort of understand the behavior and how their site is being used as well. So we have a bit of a comparator that we're happy to let you know about when we know more.
And 211, I mean, they really are reaching a lot of people. So that's maybe another resource. All right, thanks so much. Really appreciate all of this.
We have 2 more questions, but Natalie, to not leave Martha's question right away, do we have any statistics on how many people have gotten jobs from Redirect during this period?
Not at this time. So we're working very closely with TCAD on a really rich set of indicators that they're gathering. And I have to say that this is a very tricky thing to measure. As far as we can tell, we can look at new job postings and when those postings are removed. Now remember, we're talking in many cases about the private sector. So we don't entirely know when a private sector business has hired, but we can likely assume that if they've removed the job posting, someone has filled it. If we were talking about public sector jobs, that would be a little easier to trace. So that's the method that we're making the most of at the moment. We should be able to tell you a little more in a few weeks.
Okay, great, thank you. And I see my computer has frozen. I have Henry and then Deborah.
Thanks, Natalie, for your work. I noticed that you had on March 23rd as the first date. Was that soon enough for the claims, or were claims also filed before that?
Let me see how I can answer. So I believe the executive orders, which were like one on Wednesday, one on Thursday, one on Friday, in terms of reduction of workforce, were the week prior. So the Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday prior to that March 23rd date. Just to give you some context of what we're looking at there, a typical week here in the county, I say typical, I'll give you 2 characteristics. one at the height of the recession or a typical week during seasonal layoffs would see approximately 50 claims for unemployment insurance. So when you compare that 50 next to the numbers on that slide, that will give you an indication of how much the claims have spiked. So the first week is really the week that the New York State Department of Labor, that week of March 23rd, has reported to us. So that's just what we're using for context. But we can prepare some data that shows more trends for the county if you think that would be helpful.
That would be great.
Sure. Also, do you have a breakdown by industry of those numbers or not?
We don't have a breakdown for the industries that individuals came from and then claimed. We do know some behavior about industries that are hiring. And I don't want to hand too much off to Heather, but I think that she may be reporting on that. We do know, just as sort of intake to workforce redirect and the new jobs, that a lot of those new jobs as a result of COVID-19 tend to be, as you might imagine, janitorial and cleaning positions, healthcare. As I said before, the grocery stores in the county, food delivery, and really a pretty big assortment of jobs that can be done remotely and from home. That's about as much as I can say at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Deborah?
Yes, thank you. Natalie, you've really gotten thrown in the deep end of the pool and you're swimming along really, really well. So congratulations. I was curious, you mentioned when you talked about Tompkins Redirect that if you're looking for a job, you need to get out there. And I was just wondering where exactly out there is. How do people hook up with these new job postings?
Yeah, so all of this, of course, with the proviso that we want people to stay healthy and safe. And so, as workforce, we sort of had this three-pronged thing to address. We want people to be healthy and safe. We want to make sure people get their unemployment benefits and their other benefits, but we also want them to work. And so we have been trying to braid all of that along as we go. The best thing you can do is go to the link, or you can Google. You Google Workforce Redirect in Tompkins.
Sorry, can you repeat that, Natalie? There was sneezing going on.
Yes, if you Google Workforce Redirect, no hyphen, and Tompkins, in Google, this is the first line that comes up, is a link to and this is a jobs board. The site on the Tompkins Workforce website has the jobs board and all of the resources that link you to the public benefits that are now available. In addition to things like childcare places in the county and other types of assistance.
Thank you.
Great, Natalie. Thank you so much. We have two resolutions from your department. The first resolution is appropriation from contingent fund terminal pay workforce development board. That's ID 9309. Can I have someone move that? And actually, weirdly, oh, there you all are. My computer lost Zoom for a second. Was that Martha, you're raising your hand? All right, thank you. Martha moves it, Annie seconds. There any questions? Can we have a roll call? Annie?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Martha?
Yes.
Henry? Henry?
Yes.
Great, that is unanimous. And then we have a second resolution authorization to enter into a multi-year lease, Workforce Development ID 9310. Can I have someone move that?
Anna?
Yes.
That's the revised resolution that was sent to committee members.
It was sent this morning, or was that sent yesterday?
No, yesterday.
Yeah, great. So as long as everybody knows this is the revised version, Martha moved, Annie seconded. Any questions?
Yes,
Martha, I see your hand, and then Henry.
Thanks. I'm a little fuzzy on what the staffing is right now, Natalie. I know we had a period of a full-time assistant that we had budgeted. I'm not sure that person was hired over under Julia. So what is your staffing right now?
So our staffing is, yes, you're correct. So Julia and I overlapped for 5 weeks. Julia was extended for 15 hours a week throughout the month of April. So that is her terminal pay. And then we had in the pipeline a budget line to hire a deputy. We have not moved forward with that yet. And then we have an administrative coordinator, and that is the workforce development staff. And then, as you know, we have a subcontract with the Office of Employment and Training at the Career Center at Center Ithaca.
Okay, so the administrative coordinator is filled, that position is filled?
Yes.
Okay, is that full-time?
Yes.
And the deputy, it's something we budgeted, but you haven't filled. And
So
That is correct.
and this is probably under the soft freeze that Jason has imposed. So, Jason, did you want to, I mean, first off, on the resolution about the space, this is great. I'm really glad TCAD has expanded and you guys can work there, et cetera. But I don't know if this is a moment when Jason, if you would have something to say about the deputy position? Jason? Whether that would be hired or not? Jason's on mute and visually, okay. All right, so so that's obviously something that's in the sort of in the wind there. All right, thanks very much.
Thanks.
Henry?
yes, I had the same question. What additional staff have you hired, or do you plan on hiring for the additional space that you need?
The plan is to bring on a deputy director, which I could very easily make the argument is needed now more than ever.
Right.
To be quite honest. So we are at the moment sort of holding steady, but that position has been budgeted for and has been approved by our board.
So I
Okay.
know Jason had to step away for a phone call about 10 minutes ago. So if he comes back on, we can always ask him. But I do want to, we're a few minutes behind, and I wanted to make sure that we have enough time for Heather's presentation for TCAD. She gave us a lot of great information. We have one more resolution after that. So if there are no more questions, Natalie, thank you so much. I asked you to throw this together a couple weeks ago. And you did an amazing job throwing it all together, and you've been doing an amazing job for, since you've joined our team. I will check in with Leslin. I thought that was a great idea, Martha, to have this presentation go out to the full legislature. So I'll reach out to Leslin for that. Great suggestion. I see Anne has one last comment.
And
Are we in the
not
middle
just
of a
email.
resolution? Don't we need to vote?
Not just email, to present to the full legislature. Yep,
Thank you, thank you.
absolutely. Annie?
Are we in the middle of a resolution? Don't we need to vote?
We have not voted on it. Correct. Thank you, Annie. If there
I
are no
vote
more,
yes.
okay, got it. Martha,
Yes,
Mike Lane, Mike Ziegler,
Yes.
Henry.
I
Woo.
thought we were gonna wait for Jason to come back to talk
Um,
about the.
I don't think that people's vote on this is contingent on whether or not this position is going to be hired. There's, Natalie made it clear that the space need is there. There are already 2 people working and the renovation has already been done. So the question was independent of this resolution.
Weren't there 2 people working there before? I guess I'm confused.
Natalie, do you want to follow up?
Sure. So this is, we have, as workforce board staff, have traditionally been a sub-leasee of Tompkins County area development. So there has been an existing lease in place for several years now. There has been an expansion of offices to accommodate the growth of our work and the hiring, the budgeted hiring of a deputy director. So the work on that expansion has been done. This is a multi-year lease agreement that I believe would take us to March 2025. And I think the agreement is just for this year. The budget extension is just for this year. I'm afraid I do not have the resolution in front of me. If that makes sense. So we haven't hired the deputy yet. That position is budgeted. And we hope to move forward with that process as soon as possible.
Okay.
Are you ready to vote, Henry?
Yes, it's okay.
Great, thank you. So that is unanimous. I see Heather has her hand up. And I'd like to thank you, Natalie, for all your work. Heather, I'd love to move to your presentation. Everybody has it in their notes. The documents that were sent to us via email from Kathy yesterday, or from Katrina yesterday.
Hi, everyone. So I think first on the agenda for TCAD, Anna and I had met and talked about this year, every other month, TCAD spending a little bit of time focusing on one of the core things we do, or, you know, a hot topic that we're working on. So this month, our first presentation is just an overview of our revolving loan fund. And I'm going to turn it over to Chuck Schwerin, who's our Director of Business Services at TCAD.
Thanks, Heather. Can I share my screen? Is that okay? Because I've got an updated PowerPoint
That would be great. I don't know, Kathy, is that possible?
I think I've just done it. Can you see it?
No.
Hang on.
In the meantime, Jason, there was a question about, oh, there it is. Before we start, Jason, did you want to answer really quickly? There was a question about soft freezes. There's the deputy position for the Workforce Development Board, and where the soft freezes are. And
yes, I've given Natalie the go-ahead to fill that position with more emphasis on workforce development, and workforce is going to be a necessity in the upcoming weeks and months. So I've given her the go-ahead to go ahead and advertise and post for that position.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Jason. Henry, that should answer your question as well.
Yep.
Wonderful. Chuck, thank you so much for coming, and
Sure.
please take it away.
Okay, I know we're running behind, so I will be concise. I wanted to give you just a little bit of a background on sort of the program, and then sort of where we are currently. So one of the things that differentiates us from, let's say, from banks or from other regional loan funds is that we are targeting our applicants in the traded sector world, that being companies that sell their products or services beyond the walls of Tompkins County. Purpose is to bring resources from outside the county in and to generate quality jobs here, hopefully persuade companies to put down roots and to stay here. So we're focusing on advanced manufacturing companies, high tech, healthcare, agro-tourism. We're not looking to support a business that has direct competitors generally, and is basically serving the local markets. So we're not going to be lending to restaurants, bars, hair salons, that sort of business. The use of the funds is quite broad. One of the areas that we really focus on is allowing companies to liberally use our capital to keep the operation prosperous, functioning, and growing. So while we are taking a stake in mortgages and business assets, we tend to focus more on working capital. We are not interested in helping folks refinance their existing debt to lower their interest rates. That's not the purpose of the TCAD fund family. A gap financer means that we are generally tagging along with other financial institutions. So typically we would partner with a bank or another regional loan fund. We generally do not go it alone, with an individual loan. That we're making an exception when we get down to our emergency relief loan program, but in our traditional program, we generally are partnering with other institutions. We've got currently 5 funds in our portfolio. The monies come from a variety of different sources, and this goes back a number of years. The largest 2 are countywide, and TCAD countywide was funded originally from CDBG funds, and the Dryden Fund is earmarked only for companies that are located within the town of Dryden. We have the discretion to select from whichever fund we feel is appropriate. So for example, with Dryden, can you see that on the right-hand side, we had about $55,000. Virtually all of it has now been spoken for with the recent move of Emmy's Organics up into Dryden. So as of the January auditors or CPA report, we still have about a little over $800,000 available to lend. And so we felt we wanted to make a contribution to the existing situation we find ourselves in that I'll speak to in a couple of minutes. So since our inception, we've made 76 loans, put out almost $400 million into the community. Here's a listing of the 5 largest ones that we've made in that period. Generally, our typical loan is between $50,000 and $150,000. One of the other aspects about the loan fund is that we are quite attractive as compared to traditional lenders. Our interest rates are generally lower than a bank's. They range from 75% of whatever the prime rate is to 125% of prime. Prime's about 3.25 right now. So we're pretty attractive as a funding option for small businesses. Currently, we've got 11 loans outstanding. There's a list of the folks that we're supporting with a little over $1 million lent out. And as you can see, it's a pretty broad spectrum of companies that serve a unique purpose in our community. So what have we done about COVID-19? First of all, we contacted all our existing borrowers and offered them a 6-month reprieve of all principal and interest. And one of the other differences that we offered was that we're not re-amortizing those loans. You know, at the end of 6 months, we're basically restarting the clock and extending their loan out an additional 6 months, whereas a typical lender would re-amortize so that if, let's say, you don't have to pay a mortgage for 3 months, in that 4th month, you owe 4 months of mortgage. Not sure how that's going to be doable by most companies. So we chose to extend the loans, which is, I think, vastly more attractive and feasible for them. So we cobbled together $350,000 for this purpose. We asked the foundation for a contribution of $150,000, and we're donating $200,000 from our own fund family. The loans are up to $50,000 at 2.5%, so below prime, for 3 months. For 3 years, with no payments due until month 13. We've also waived all costs associated with applying and closing. So we've streamlined the legal documents, and we are eating the cost of the legal fees associated with that. We also are looking to play a role in sort of the a growth of emerging high-tech, potentially high-growth startups that spin off from the incubators in this community, such as the McGovern Center for Life Sciences and the Praxis Center, which is a digital incubator at Cornell. One of the challenges with early stage companies is that they are not, quote unquote, bankable. You can't generally go to a bank if you are pre-revenue or early stage revenue, because you don't have the collateral that a bank expects. So those companies are relying on small business innovation research grants. That's the SBIR grant, which is offered by the 11 largest federal agencies. They set aside about 3% of their annual budget to support R&D, specifically to translate technology into a commercializable product. Launch New York, 76 West, Grow New York, those are other sources of either convertible debt or grants that early stage companies rely upon. Essentially, when you're starting out, you rely on friends, family, and fools, and then perhaps high net worth angel investors, way before you are attractive to institutional venture capitalists. So how can we play a role there? The so-called valley of death is brutal for, the kinds of companies that are spinning out of our universities, and they need help at a critical point in their development when the research and development funds are drying up, as depicted by the left-hand curve. The commercializing resources are very limited at that period of time. The banks are not there. The venture capitalists have not seen your revenue stream to be sufficiently fruitful to risk their capital. So we would like to play a role right in that nexus where the sort of the two lines cross. So we're proposing a new convertible debt instrument that hopefully will be part of a new fund called the Opportunity Fund, if we get it approved. So this is sort of pre-publication information. The KISS is a keep it simple security form that is inexpensive for the borrower from a legal perspective. And it gives TCAD great options. It's essentially a loan for a period of time, which does not show up on their balance sheet because it's convertible debt. That means that we can, at our option, convert it to shares in the company when there's a triggering event, such as they're raising $1 million or $2 million from a Series A round or wherever they happen to be in their financing trajectory. The point is to keep them here in Tompkins County, to put down roots for as long as feasible, hopefully forever, and gives us significant potential upside to be a partner with them if we so choose. Again, we have that option to convert it to a traditional loan or to try to ride the roller coaster with them if it looks like it's an exciting opportunity. Our first candidate is being considered now, a spinoff from Cornell with significant local support and already a national client base. So that's kind of where we are today. I'm happy to take any questions if you've got any.
Does anybody have any questions for Chuck? I don't see any hands. Martha?
Yeah, thanks. These are great innovations, great opportunities, Chuck. You said the $350 emergency loan fund. Did I see that you have 45 applicants already, something like that?
We had actually 55 inquiries for
Okay.
that, for the $350,000 fund. That resulted in 10 applications being sent out. Again, many of them are companies that do not fit our criteria as traded sector businesses. And we're trying to be as sort of flexible as possible there, but some of them are just not appropriate. And of those 10 that we sent out, 5 have sent in full applications with, as I said, a certain number expected in the next couple of days.
Okay, so 10 is the number that were eligible by your basic criteria.
In theory, until I see what the application and the accompanying documents look like, I can't be certain that they'll all be accepted. With a $50,000 max, 10 is too many. So either we give them less than the max or some aren't going to make the cut.
Okay, all right, thanks very much.
And you said 5 have already gone through and you have
5, I've received 5. They're being processed as we speak.
okay. Annie?
Thanks for the presentation, Chuck. So my question is, having an interest or a stake in the company, would that be, I like the flexibility there, would, to be able to kind of help the company, in various ways as far as it being either debt or as an interest, rather than just something that's on their balance sheets that could make make it more difficult for them to get other financing. But would that be something that would be, maybe you don't have the answer yet, continue to have interest in the company, or just to get them through the first couple of years as a startup?
Right. So the nice thing about that is that we have the option to continue to have an equity stake and ride it with them. Obviously, there's risk involved as well, because that we cannot control the operations of that company. But let's say, and in many cases, let's say they're a target of an acquisition. They're gobbled up by a larger company. Sadly, if that means they're moving out of the area, wish them well, but it would allow us to enjoy a multiple of the investment that we originally made, which we then roll into supporting several other companies that follow on. So it's new, so we don't have any experience doing it yet, but it's a well understood model. And again, if we're uncomfortable with the way things are going, we can convert it at our option to a traditional loan and be repaid.
Thank you, Chuck. I know we have two other reports from Heather, the Industrial Development Agency Fund Balance Report and TCAD Monthly Report. I want to make sure, I know, you know, we've hit 11:30. We still have one resolution to go through. So I'd like to give Heather a bit of time, if everybody's okay going over for a few minutes. I'm seeing some nods. Great. Welcome, Heather. Thank you so much, Chuck.
Yeah, thank you, Chuck. Chuck's been very busy, and one thing that happens when the economy is tanking is that economic development organizations are extremely busy. So he's really done a great job of answering questions, sending folks to the right place for information, and of course, subscribing our new emergency loan fund, all at the same time still working on that opportunity fund. He's processing that first applicant through that program this week as well. So next up is TCAD's memo regarding the IDA and the Development Corporation's fund balance. It's in your packet. This is required as part of the MOU between TCAD and the county that we report on that fund balance. So as of the end of the year, we've just completed the audit for both organizations. After we take out the obligations for 2020, the available balance, and then that allowance, we have an allowance for $600,000 from to keep in the fund balance. Our available balance is $423,166. The finance committees of both entities, the IDA and the Development Corporation, did meet late last year and started talking about, okay, if we have fund balance, what could we do with it? And started to come up with some ideas around that. We haven't formalized anything yet, but as you can see, the Development Corporation has approved some funding of programs. The bulk of it, $300,000 for two separate emergency relief loan funds, one for small business that AFCU is managing, and then also the TCAD fund. TCAD also applied for an ARC Power grant to facilitate a 17-mile length of broadband fiber from Hanshaw Road up to the Cayuga Operating Company to repower as a data center. In total, I believe it was either a $400,000 or $800,000 grant. So the Development Corporation did agree to match that grant if they receive it, with $50,000 from the Development Corporation. We also funded $50,000 in pre-development costs for the Downtown Conference Center so that they could hire a project manager and do some architectural and design drawings that have been underway as that project moves forward. So our total remaining fund balance is $23,000. I also just noted in there that we did have some folks from the Orange County IDA come up and do a presentation, I want to say in early March. It seems like forever ago now, about these community-based accelerator programs that they're developing throughout Westchester or throughout Orange County. And there was some positive response from that and some interest. And we had planned to talk more to the IDA about moving forward with doing some community-driven incubators for small businesses. And now we've spent that money on emergency funds, and we're hoping that in the future there will be more funding available to really look deeper at this, I think, really novel approach to business and community development.
Would those incubators be in partnership with the REV?
They could be, however, they would be a little bit different. REV, most of their members, or a good number of their members, are very early stage companies or pre-revenue companies, or even people with an idea that are starting to launch a business. The accelerators are dedicated to actual businesses and helping them to grow. So a little bit different market.
Thank you for the information. Anybody have any questions for Heather? Martha?
Thanks. It's really good timing that we had this kind of that you had this kind of balance. a little confused. The TCAD Emergency Relief Fund, 150,000. I thought Chuck said 100 was coming from TCDC to go with 250 from,
No, it's
Oh,
150, 150 and 200 from our own funds.
okay, I got it backwards. Okay, all right, that's all. Thank you very much. We don't have to vote on this, right?
No, this is just a report.
Okay, thank you.
And then Heather, your TCAD monthly report?
You also have our report in the packet. I'm happy to answer questions. Just, to let you know that we are all really busy at TCAD, primarily working from home. We are organizing and leading with Savante Myrick, a countywide bi-weekly recovery cabinet that's been meeting and filling in based on what's happening in different sectors. So that's happening. We've also been hosting a weekly meeting of all the economic, workforce, and community development partners, where we meet and talk about who's doing what. The SBDC is there, the Alliance for Manufacturing and Technology, our city partners, Natalie from Workforce. And that's really been an area for us to coordinate resources and make sure that we're pushing out things together through that group. We have been pushing out bi-weekly a survey to businesses that's going out from the city, the Downtown Alliance, the Chamber, and TCAD to all of our stakeholders so that we can get some real-time information about how businesses are being impacted and what kinds of resources they're accessing. This past third survey that we sent out, we did have them give us their contact information if they wanted to be contacted. We split all those contacts up between all the agencies. So we've been calling and responding and providing direct resources to companies, TCAD's staff, part of our staff that do business services, that would be Chuck and Kathy May. On the workforce side, have definitely been fielding inquiries and phone calls. And we're just trying to get information out there on our website. We've got that up and we've been pushing information out to our stakeholders about bi-weekly. Many of the manufacturing companies are operating. They're considered essential businesses, albeit, they've put in place shared work programs and reduced work schedules. Some of them have moved from 1 to 2 and even 3 shifts so that there's less people on the floor. They've definitely put in place operations for including PPE and other safety precautions. So I think that's some of the positive things that we're seeing. Some of the manufacturers have shifted. Some of the R&D companies are looking at virus assays and antibodies and helping to participate in the crisis and emergency response. So, we're seeing a little bit of positive things. And now we're starting to really start thinking about re-entry and how that happens in the safest manner possible. I've been talking to my stakeholders about putting together some resources for businesses to really think about the PPE and social distancing and what they're going to need to do to make sure that when we go back to work, we do it as safely as possible. I also heard this morning that the regional economic development councils were part of the 8-county Southern Tier region. The ESD regional offices have been required to put together a regional reopening plan and provide that to the governor in the next 2 weeks. So I'm assuming that's going to include all kinds of recommendations and requirements around social distancing and using PPE and enforcement and all that kind of thing. So I'm trying to insert myself into that process and also coordinate with the county to make sure that, whatever they're doing at the region works for the county and that the county can influence some of that decision making at the regional level. Questions for me?
Annie?
Thank you, Heather, for the presentation. Just wondering if you've heard of any businesses that have received funding from the PPP?
Yes, I actually talked to 2 businesses yesterday that got all of their loan documents and were just waiting disbursement. So some of the early companies that got in within the first few days, they're starting to get their commitments and their approvals.
Can you tell me about what size companies? Because we're hearing that makes a lot of the smaller ones. I mean, not here, but overall throughout the country, I guess I was hearing that smaller companies were having a harder time.
The majority of our companies here in Tompkins County have less than 100 employees. So, you know, folks I'm talking to have 20, 50 employees. I would say those that have that do have a regular relationship with the bank, and most successful businesses do, were able to get in and get those applications processed faster. And, you know, we are definitely talking to some of our stakeholders about some of those businesses that might not necessarily have that ongoing relationship with the bank that were left out in the first round, to make sure that they're going to be prepared and ready in this third round, now that more money has been allocated both for PPP and the EIDL loans. So we've been pushing information out, talking to our constituents, so that some of those smaller businesses and farm-based businesses included have their information ready to go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Unless there are other questions for Heather, thank you guys so much for coming and all of this tremendous information and work you guys are doing. You are the groups that are, I think, probably the most active of everyone right now, and will be so important for our economic recovery. So thank you so much.
Well, we're all in this together, and I feel like I'm in a really special community that we've been able to really coordinate and communicate together. And we're going to come out of this together. It might be a really long road, but our community has shown over and over how resilient we are. So we're in a really special place.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. And we're definitely going to stick together in this one. Thank you so much. And a big thank you from Annie. So we have 2 resolutions, our final resolutions. We do not have any liaison appointments. One of them that was sent back to committee, which was Henry's resolution, that was the Housing 8125. I don't know how we want to proceed with this. I have submitted a resolution that I had offered as an alternative, and that's the resolution supporting 8140 for the state. Kathy, I think that it can go through a process where we look at one at a time. We could bring forward Henry's, and I could offer mine as a substitution. I don't know what the best process is.
Sure, you could do it that way, or the committee could decide not to take action on one and act on the other. However you wish to proceed, I think be appropriate.
Martha, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I'm already running out of time, so I'd like to do this as efficiently as possible. I understand the differences between the two is that, and I'm gonna mess up the numbers, so I'll just say Anna's and Henry's. Anna's, you are referencing a state legislation that's proposed to create a fund to pay, am I right, to pay?
It's similar to what was discussed by the CDBG, that it is fun. It's a voucher system for people who have who are rent burdened, and their rent is greater than 30% of their rent, and they have documented COVID, negative economic impact of COVID. Pretty
Okay,
straightforward,
and
constitutional.
What I was going to say is that one is a fund from state dollars that would pay the rent where people are challenged. The other one is a blanket way of rent payments. Is that correct, Henry? Basically, not paid by the state, not reimbursed in any way by the state, but just
forgiveness.
Yeah, it's suspension of rent. And suspension of
rent. And suspension of mortgage, and you made the point that is, can help some people, but not landlord has a mortgage on a property. So
Right.
if I can cut to the chase here so that we can do this efficiently, I support the idea that what we're doing where the, like with the CGB money, if we are paying that rent for people instead of just asking the landlords to eat that cost, I would support that as opposed to just putting it on landlords to not get that money. So I would support the fund and not the forgiveness, if that makes
Okay, so yes, that does. Annie, what is your thought? We can put forward just the one, or we can put forward Henry's and substitute, or vote on both of them separately. What is your preference?
I would like, I feel the same as what Martha said, and I would like to, I'm fine either way, but I would, at this point, I would just move to do yours or as a substitution. I don't
Okay.
care the method.
Great. Mike Sigler?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind you guys if you want to do a voucher system. I mean, that's fine by me. I would eliminate any reference to any of the bills, just because I haven't read the whole bill, to be honest. If you're just saying, hey, listen, we think that there should be a system set up where there's vouchers in place. I mean, we already have kind of like the mechanism to do that, as we saw earlier in the meeting. I think that's a good way forward. But if you're going to be referencing certain bills and stuff, I mean, we all know that, you know, when you get to the state level and the federal level, what a bill, what its main concept is, there's a bunch of add-ons to get it passed, and I don't know what those add-ons are going to be. So, yeah, I mean, a voucher system, I'm down with that. That's fine.
Okay, I can speak just really quickly for everybody. What I appreciated about the bill is that it outlined very explicitly restrictions. So for example, a person would need to be rent burdened, meaning they would need to be 30% or greater. If it's a full student household, they would need to prove that they're independent from the income of their parents. So, you know, it outlined the only, you know, major detail was the actual outline of the restrictions, which I appreciated. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward that it would go through OCR and it could be implemented. It could be implemented locally, but could be implemented by the state. So it's pretty straightforward. So Henry, are you okay? It sounds like the other three would like to move forward with the 8140.
Yes, I didn't want it referred to committee anyway, so yes, I'm fine with it.
Okay. So I would like to move the resolution urging the state to establish an emergency rental assistance program, SB 8140 A10248 in response to the COVID-19 crisis.
I'll second it unless Henry wants to, because I think that might be important for me if he wants to do that.
No, I do not.
Okay, I'll second it.
Okay, any questions? Okay, all in favor? I'm gonna do a roll call. Mike Sigler?
I'm going to vote in favor, but I'm now going to go back and read the assembly bill and make sure. I mean, I trust you. I obviously think that what you're telling me is correct. So I'm going to go on that faith, and then we'll see at the legislature. You know, I'm sure what you're telling me is correct. So I'll vote for it out of committee.
Thank you. Annie?
Yes.
Martha? You're on mute.
I undid that. I agree. It would be good to have that legislation in time to send this to the full when we send it to the full legislature.
And I can email that to everyone. Henry?
Yes.
I see Sean and Deborah are still on the call. Did you have any comments? Great. All right, that is unanimous. And that is our last action for this meeting. It was a very thorough meeting. We got a lot of great information. Thank you everybody for your patience. And this meeting is adjourned. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.